for links to the proliferation of graphic material. Called Project Flicker, some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DoD-affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DoD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security sweeps. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those individuals who are being recognized as the ones who are perpetrating this.
So Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is the co-author to this bill. She said this, quote, the notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace and one we must fight head-on. Now, the fact that the Pentagon workers, be they civil or military or otherwise, already submit to a gauntlet of daily scrutiny just going in and out of work, is it fair then to the tens of thousands who are completely innocent to further allow that much more government intrusion into their digital devices or the things that they're dealing with on their computers?
Well, remember that what's being talked about here is not an intrusion into someone's personal device or even their home. This is about saying Department of Defense computers are being misused to share, to spread, to access child pornography. And when you step into an office, whether it's a Department of Defense office or it's the offices at RT America, wherever you go into an office, you do not have the right to simply use the technology within that office space however you want, and you certainly don't have the right to use it in a criminal manner. So essentially this bill is trying to do, again, two things. It's trying to limit that and crack down on the misuse of those computer systems, but it also is going after those individuals. One of the things that this bill attempts to do, and there's a Senate version of it put together by Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, but essentially what these two bills are trying to do is say, look, the Department of Defense does not have an adequate way of responding to this, of tracking down and investigating who as an individual is misusing these computers, who is sharing these pornographic images of children, who is sending them to whom. And so one of the things it does is the bill actually opens up civilian law enforcement to come in and to work with the Pentagon and with the DoD to actually investigate and to track down who is misusing, again, these computers for this purpose. So the bill, it's about more than just stopping it. It's about going after those who have been perpetrating it, who so far aren't being gone after.
Now, Ben, you and I, obviously, we're both parents here, and this is something that is terrifying, I think, to anybody that is a parent. What about the bigger... Infuriating. I mean, it's disgusting and maddening. The bigger picture here, Ben, how do we, the people, crack down on this? It's a disgusting crime. How is this continuing to proliferate in a day where they can track your every movement and what you do?
Well, because clearly in this case, these are the people who are helping to do the tracking. I know NSA and a lot of these civilian agencies do, but when you reach a certain point within these military spaces, a lot of these people apparently feel that they can go untouched. And so far, they pretty much have. About 80% of the cases where child pornography has been sent through these DoD servers have not been prosecuted, have not even been looked at or tracked down. 80% of them, Manila. So the majority of the people who are doing this through the Department of Defense are not having to pay any kind of price for it. I think this is a very serious issue, but it's also an issue that we need to recognize is a very real issue.
Yeah.
When people talk about child pornography or predators out there, we are being limited to a discussion of that, the creepy person who lives in a certain house, and that's where we want to talk about it. But when we talk about it on a bigger spectrum, military, government, those who are in power, people don't want to discuss it. It's a very real issue.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that there's some 25,000 people that go in and out of the Pentagon every single day. And a lot of these, I mean, they have to have some level of clearance to begin with. But I think some of the people that are not being prosecuted are some of the ones who have the highest clearances in this country. So that's kind of a scary thing to think about.
Some of these people we know have the highest classification in terms of classified access to information and material, and that's pretty scary.
That is scary that some of those people might be these gross individuals sharing this kind of information. All right, Ben Swan, as always, appreciate your take on this. Thank you.
Bipartisan bill aims to stop child pornography trafficking on Defense Department's network. Dem Rep-elect. I won't vote for Pelosi. We need new leadership. Washington CNN. A bipartisan group of lawmakers on Tuesday introduced A bipartisan group of lawmakers on Tuesday. A bipartisan group of lawmakers on Tuesday introduced a bill that would crack down on the use of the Department of Defense Internet Network for trafficking child pornography. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement identified over 5,000 individuals, several of whom are affiliated with the Defense Department, who subscribe to child pornography websites in an investigation called Project Flicker. A subsequent inquiry by the Defense Criminal Investigative Service tagged hundreds of Defense Department affiliates as suspects in child pornography cases, according to a news release. The bill, introduced by Rep. Abigail Spanberger, a Virginia Democrat, and Rep. Mark Meadows, a North Carolina Republican, would help the Defense Department stamp out use of its computers and network to access and share child pornography. The legislation would bolster training, improve technical capacities, and require collaboration with both law enforcement and social service providers. Spanberger, a former federal agent who worked on child exploitation and child pornography cases, called the abuse and exploitation of children through pornography horrific crimes. The notion that the Department of Defense's network and Pentagon-issued computers may be used to view, create, or circulate such horrifying images is a shameful disgrace, and one we must fight head-on, Spanberger said in a statement. According to child pornography watchdog Internet Crimes Against Children Child Online Protective Services, the Defense Department network consistently ranks in the top tier of Internet service providers for trafficking child pornography. It ranked 19th of nearly 3,000 networks surveyed in 2018. Meadows said the legislation could close security gaps in the Department of Defense's network to identify perpetrators and ultimately hold them responsible. Reps Anna Eshoo and T.J. Cox, both California Democrats, co-sponsored the House bill. A similar Senate bill was introduced by Sens. Brian Schatz, a Hawaii Democrat, and Lisa Murkowski, an Alaska Republican, in May.
Okay, as you can see, this is the bill that was trying to be passed. Actually, ended up not passing. It seems like he was dead on December 31st, 2020, literally 3 years ago. This is the bill that was supposed to kind of help DoD fight and combat the sharing of peer-to-peer child porn between, different employees at the Pentagon. And unfortunately, it's so nasty that it didn't go through. It was denied. I don't know how that's just insanity. You know how hard to find information about this it is. It's just like you can't find that anywhere. I mean, it's just so hard to get some information about this. But either way, just to show how pedophilia-centric this world is in regard of like this Department of Defense and governmental, a bill that's supposed to kind of help out some of the issue that's ongoing in the DoD was not passed. I mean, they weren't even asking crazy things. They're just saying, like, give more, financial help in regard of like trying to help stop that thing. And it's not some crazy things. It's just, and they weren't asking too much. And that didn't even go through. You gotta understand, the DoD got billions and billions and billions of budget every year increasing. And a simple thing just to kind of help with the DoD to have better resources to help stop child porn being passed around within the network, that was denied. I just want to put things back in perspective. Reality is reality, and reality is not escapable. I've accepted the reality and I'm not going to let people involved in a program where these entities are running the program and try to make me accept the way to make me experience things. But please see the reality for what it is.
Not being prosecuted? Where are
some
1,700 potential cases that were referred to military investigators 4 years ago, but were never screened. Gordon S. Hedel, the Department of Defense's Inspector General, said in a statement to the Globe that his office is working aggressively to correct the mishandling of cases identified in a multi-department government probe called Operation Flicker. I can assure those with questions that my office is conducting an aggressive pursuit of anyone implicated in Operation Flicker and that it is a key investigative priority, Hedel said in his first public statement on the matter. The Pentagon agency has faced intense criticism in recent months for its part of a nationwide child pornography investigation that was spearheaded by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, which has jurisdiction for such federal crimes under its mandate. The Globe reported earlier this week the Pentagon had checked only 3,500 out of 5,200 people who were suspected of downloading child pornography. The partial screening of that list, which was conducted in 2007, identified 302 people who were military personnel, civilian employees, or private contractors. Some of those held high-level security clearances and worked at sensitive intelligence agencies such as the National Security Agency, which eavesdrops on enemy communications. Several also accessed the images on their work computers, a separate violation. Out of the 302 cases, 70 were eventually pursued, and only a handful resulted in prosecutions.
So, you hear this.
the CIA raping children and sexually assaulting children, and they're not being prosecuted? Where are you? Oh, that's the thing.
Target. They're following the handbook perfectly. So whoever the handlers are, these are typical CIA torture scripts. I mean, Kubark manual. And they do good cop, bad cop interrogation called Jeff and Mutt, and they go right through the list, right? Just textbook. So whoever the handlers are on the other side of this synthetic telepathy, they're following the handbook perfectly.
2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was simply fired. One employee purchased sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. One employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. Not sure what actions, if any, were taken by him. One contractor arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent. I think that you mentioned that. Posing as a child, he had his contract revoked. One CIA staffer was charged with child sexual crimes, and the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. But sexual crimes involving children, says BuzzFeed, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies that handle sensitive information. In a November 2009 report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees America's spy satellites acknowledge viewing images of child sexual abuse during polygraph examinations. This is so disturbing. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that is happening in the general evil?
Allie, we're told, and when I was put through recruitment into the intel community, you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into Congress, and Congress needs to launch a brand new church committee, number one, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number two, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting behind
Skull?
Okay. You just heard reality. The reason why I keep doing these things is because as a target individuals, they try to create a falsified reality, a reality of delusionality that you can't even comprehend. And reality just comes back and just be super obvious about things. I don't want to speak in metaphors, but my point is, we are gaslighted as target individuals to believe a reality that's super falsified. They create storylines and ways of trying to perceive reality and want you to think in ways that are just not logical, rational, basically for you to accept this false persona. I'm a TI, target individual. I'm a human subject in the program where we are being utilized, where defense weapons are being utilized onto us for the purpose of developing a technology, a weapon that's already very much advanced. So once you're a target individual, they apply these tactics that they apply to so many others. What you just heard are those entities in charge of this. A lot of the things they like to do to us are just disgusting and pedophilia-centric. With me, they do this pedophilia type of torture and then try to make me accept that this is something that I should subscribe to, because what it is they are making me experiencing something I've experienced as a child. That's what they're doing in my brain, is they manipulate my brain, rewiring, changing my brain into a reaction I felt when I was a child or in my childhood at some points. And those are the way they try to make me accept things that they do to me right now. So I will look at a child, little girls of all ages, the babies, the not the babies, but almost like preteen and the teenage, the early teen, and give me stimulations. And then when I get those stimulations, no, what we did, we mapped it to you when you were in middle school, or you when you were 9 years old, or you when you were 8 years, some stupid things. And because they can try to create something that you experienced as in your childhood or something, it's just disgusting things. And then today they're like, what we're doing, we mind your brain, and this is what we expect. Went through your brain, and that's how you felt this in when you were 13 years old, when you were 10 years old, when you were 9 years old. And as a 30-some-year-old, you're like, what the F? You guys are retarded. This is childlike, but obviously not. You are manipulating my brain to experience things I will not experience naturally. So what I'm experiencing today is due to the manipulation that I'm experiencing because of this program. And then they make me look at a woman and sometimes crank up the stimulation. Now, I've looked at women many times and get stimulation, but sometimes they just crank it overly. It's just beyond. I'm not be stimulated this way. It's just too much. Now, they've done that to a baby. Imagine what they can do to a woman who look like who's who's a woman, especially if the woman have curves, and I was like, okay, well, you just like added extreme stimulation, but you did that to a baby like not 2 seconds ago. And then what they do is like, now what we're doing, we're combining. This is how you felt when you were a kid, and this is how you, and then we combine those things together. It's like, what the hell? And I mean, those interaction that we have, that I am forced to experience, interaction via V2K, voice to skull, is that technology that you hear a target individual talking about. It sounds like, that's why they believe, they think they make us believe that we're schizophrenic, because the technology is basically supposed to mimic schizophrenia. It's supposed to make you react in ways that's like schizophrenic, like thoughts are manipulated. So you have these ways of thinking that are just not natural, inserted intrusive thoughts are implanted, disturbing. You have the interactions that are from external people who sound like they're your neighbors, but they're using this technology that is actually common, not common, but it's been around for a while. So they can talk to you, they can interact with you, and you sound, it goes directly to your brain. It's just something that's just crazy. I remember when they did that on August 19, 2019, I was like, what's going on? And you hear that happening a lot. But you hear these things, when somebody describes you what they're experiencing as a target individual, it sounds exactly like a schizophrenic, because they really create this ways of like, it just copies that. Like it copies the symptom of schizophrenia in the sense that you get this, you hear this interaction, but because of the technology that's able to do that, you know that people around you are contracted to make you lose your mind, right? So they make noise campaign. Do you know that they even have like this contracted trash, which are civilians contracted by these governmental entities to create this theater, and it's all orchestrated in certain ways to really try to push you to lose your sanity, right? It's part of that. But those entities, you just heard, as they manipulate your brain in these ways, because as a target individual, some of the technology they can apply onto to you is what you call synthetic telepathy, where your brain is literally hacked, and your brain is hooked to some device where they can hack your brain, make you experience things that you will not experience naturally. They can put thoughts that are not yours, memories that are not yours, memories that are manipulated, change memories, and make you experience whatever they want. Because your brain can control everything in your body, they can literally give you sexual arousals like that. That's why they can do all kinds of sexual arousal stimulation, from the little babies to anybody else. If they can do that to little babies at this point, there's nobody they cannot do that to. It's disgusting. And so it's just having to understand that. But those entities doing these things to you are the same entity you just heard. We are human subjects where this DoD technology, this defense technology, is applied onto us. It's disturbing, but that's what we go through. But these DoD entities are filled with pedophiles. And you hear how pedophilia-centric this world they're in, to that issue. Like, I mean, we're talking about, they've been ranked as like some of the top child porn sharing, networking in compare, like out of 3,000 and number 19. This is like top 20 in 3,000. That's a lot. That's really up there. And I mean that, like you heard, that means they use government computers, government network to share pedophilia stuff. It's nasty. And so when they do these things, and then use this rationality that is childlike. For example, I was on the call with this person, and she was like, what we're doing, just mapping, we're combining certain things in your brain. We go like you when you were a kid, and then we do it like when you were an adult. And it was like, even when I was a child, I honestly never reacted this way. They are just manipulating me this way. But to think that it's going to make sense that, oh, I'm going to, what we're doing with your brain, we're just making you think like when you were a kid, like when you were 13, then when you were 9, then when you were like, stupid. You just rewire my brain. When you stimulate me and do these nasty things to children, this is the pedophilia things that you're going to hear. If you make me have stimulation toward a woman, that's just you cranking up my libido and then just aiming to a woman and if you can do that to a child, then of course you can do that to a woman. What they try to do is they want you to identify to it. So they want to kind of mix it up a little bit, right? I'm not perfect. Of course, I've been looked at a woman. And I know my imperfection. Very much, they know it very much too. And it's nothing to do with this nasty pedophilia things they do to me. This is the things they use to break me down. But I'm not perfect. Very much not. I've watched, I've looked at women and they try to make me say things in disgusting ways. I've looked at women in a sexual ways. I've looked at, I'm not a saint. Not at all. Especially in my younger days and young adult days, man, I lived for me being able to be with a woman sexually. That was like, even today, I mean, this nasty things makes me basically a saint at this point. But I would look at a beautiful woman, lusting for a beautiful woman, just like any man. But they just changed it into pedophilia things. They're rewiring you. They're changing the way you actually perceive things. Now it's changed to kids. From the babies to older kids. Like, what the heck? They've changed reality in my brain. It's no longer mine. It's like they're changing things. And then want you to accept. And it's like, no, what we're doing is we're combining a little bit this. We're taking that when you were a kid, and then we're taking that. And then it's like, no, you're just changing the way I think, the way I react, the way you manipulate me to be somebody I'm not. I'm not going to sit here and present myself as somebody who's perfect. I'm not that. I'll never be that. I know my imperfection very well. But what you're doing to me is changing me into somebody I'm not. And then they're like, okay, well, what about what you did to this woman in whatever, in college, or when you were with her? What was that? Was it wrong? I'm like, wait. Now, first of all, when it comes to the pedophilia type of torture, you already do that to even women. And then you try to make us identify with this pedophilia type of torture. You just heard these entities in charge. They are doing things, disturbing things, and there's a pattern of pedophilia. Now, when you try to present yourself as somebody, okay, well, we're doing that to you because what you did to this person, for example, Courtney, for her. Wait. What you do to women, you're going to see that. Not only they torture women, they torture children sexually. If it comes from somebody who's not involved in a program where literally they dare to rape women till they kill themselves, I would maybe listen to you. But you cannot be involved in a program where these horrible stories and horrible things are happening to women is happening, and it's happening today, and it'll keep going. And you then try to tell me, oh, we're doing it for this person. You are literally destroying the life of women, but systematically in psychological ways and physically. Handicapping them, sexual torture, all of that. You have done that to them. So not only you do this pedophilia type of torture onto these women, where they also do this manipulation, you're going to hear that. But also, they have tortured these women. They have tortured them sexually. On top of trying to break them down with this pedophilia type of torture, which is a systematic thing that you're going to hear. There's nothing that they're doing to me that is unique to me. They hurt me like they hurt women. They psychologically torment me the way they psychologically torture me. This is not unique. This is a way to try to rewire somebody and change ways of thinking. And try to identify somebody into something else. Every time I look at these babies and I force to get stimulations, this is the things they do to me. But they've done that to women. You're going to hear that. It's disturbing. And so I'm never going to let them live the fantasy. And then when they try to talk about me as a child, I keep bringing that up because for them, it's disturbing. If you go into one of my videos, you see pictures of 3 kids in 8th grade. You see how this, imagine being a child of that age, doing some dumb, impulsive thing as a kid. Stupid thing. Them trying to exaggerate. They talk about groping, molesting. It's like, no, that's not true. What I did is something I did to myself. I don't even like to think about it, but that's the truth.
That's of what I did as a child. I did something stupid to myself. I impulsively do something to myself. You're trying to exaggerate it into another level to create a way to deal with and cope with the reality of what you're part of. Because these people actually torture children. You're going to hear that. And so what they want is make me imagine doing something worse than what I actually did. Groping, molesting, when in reality I'm a jerk off 8th grader who did some dumb thing as a child. While these people are here sexually torturing kids as young as 4 or 5 years old with Down syndrome, and 3-year-old little boys, and 7-year-old autistic children, and 3-week-old babies just being tortured, 7-year-old, it's just nasty. I can never let people who are involved in this, first of all, try to talk about you in your childhood doing something impulsive where they have to even exaggerate what I actually did as a kid in order to cope with the reality of what they do. But involved in the torture of children in ways that you can't even understand, sexually torturing. And then even causing mass shooting where the target individual is so disturbed that he decides to just lose his mind and kill himself by killing multiple people. 18 people died. This man was being told he was a pedophile. You're going to hear that. He's being told, you're a pedophile, insulting. He's like, okay, I'll show you. He just lost his shit, killed 18 people. They were saying that via V2K. He was hearing voice, the schizophrenic ways of the way they tried to create. They did that. This man lost it. He was a very good shooter, a gun shooter. Killed 18. While these bottom feeders are just hiding and doing the things in the most safety ways they can. They're putting other people at risk while these bottom feeders are covered, hiding somewhere. Or just not even hiding, just comfortably somewhere. If I decide to lose my stuff, my mind, the people who are actually talking the most to me, interacting with me, are not going to be the ones that are going to hurt. And even if I'm thankful, even when I see a prop who I know is involved in this program, if I do something to distress, distress is nothing. So right now, what I'm awaiting is, I'm hearing these childlike individuals tell me how they're going to dare to frame this. They're using this childlike individual, which is sold to pedophiles. And she's like, I'm going to say you raped me. And some mother says, you raped me too. I was like, oh, and they're kids. They sound like kids. And I'm like, oh, your kids, your parents sold you to pedophiles. Me getting raped is not going to change that. You're part of this. If you can torture children, you can frame people. But for these parents, for me, I'm like, please do that. You know it's going to come back to you. How can you live life normally after this, thinking that nothing's going to come to you? You lived a long life of cowardness and foulness, doing things to children, to women, or involving yourself in a program where blood of children and women is really in there. Some of the people involved, they are they're like children. There's obviously children, but there's people who you look at them, it's like, oh my gosh, pathetic. So for me, I will continuously say the same things. And then I won't, because I can. But it's my duty to say these things. For these bottom feeders, good for them. Let them be sold to pedophiles. You heard the issues with these entities. This problem with pedophilia. You heard what they say. Such a problem with pedophilia to that level. I mean, they're getting ranked top tier sharing of child porn. You know, they even said that they're going to implant child porn. They work for those same entities where child porn is just running rapid over there. So I'm sure they can easily access them. They can get all kind of child porn. They're ranked top out of 3,000, top 20. So they can get all kind of child porn they want. Do you understand how nasty these people are? And try to sound fierce doing it? Tell my target individual, stay strong. But listen, for me, I make these videos as my last things to my purpose is just to bombard with videos. I know not all my videos being watched, but when I'm no longer there, please understand, this death is so much more dignified. I could have lived this slow life. With me, they have the Psyop I keep saying. They try to get this progressive Psyop going. It's so humiliating because the people who put me in this program, where I now became a human subject for these entities, They're so conservative. I just heard like a piece on abortion, you know, how this woman who literally couldn't get an abortion, even though she was for medical purposes, had to leave the state of Texas. The people who put me in this program donated significant amount of money. I mean, significant, like I'm talking about like news media have called that out. It's called their name. Like CNBC and things like that. Like they've literally saved the employer's name as one of this mega donor to have also contributed a significant amount to this. Now I'm listening to this like news about this. I'm like, and I'm seeing this perps try to create this Psyop. Some of these perps are actually in Texas. I'm looking at like, you're such a clown. But you cannot hide from reality. It's gonna come to you. So that's why I accept reality. I'm a human subject. These people are gonna do whatever they can do to me because I'm a human subject, because these entities who donated money to even a pedophile, which they can't say his name, put me in this program. What it means is I'm gonna go through some terrible things and then I'll die. But at least I live life seeing things for what they are, and I find dignity in this death. I'm not calling myself a hero, but it feels like I feel so dignified. Thank you, God, and give me strength for what I'm gonna have to go through. Now listen to what they do and tell me, is there a combination of something? Or is it the pedophilia things that you're gonna hear? The torture they do to people. Stay strong.
Goal. This involves the projection of voices, noises, and music directly into my mind to communicate with me in real time and at the speed of thought. And it also includes the manipulation of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions in the person's mind. Additionally, the targeting is all highly perverted and sexual, as well as just
able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts, and images in imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain, they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
End my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through weapons. I don't know.
as malodorants. This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat of planted.
Human breakdown tactic of belief systems and the human will. In no-touch torture, the techniques are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their minds.
They would never take my will, and since we all know how the psychopaths groups work with what the TI says or does, then they started during the nights to run some kind of beam where suddenly I've been wakened up at 3 o'clock in the mornings and some kind of voice comes and say phrases, sound incomprehensible, and some other times can actually catch what is saying, ITS not my voice, a different voice, and I realize that they are trying to program for me to take it in a way that I won't notice a possible change in my behavior. Of course this is not new, because one main thing this program is out there, is called behavior modification for the undesirable, and that's one of the excuses this groups give for the neighbor TO join, deception. I learned to talk back, in my mind, during the process when I was awakened, and I would say demeaning things that I cannot repeat it in this blog, you know what I mean. Since they had violated me for so long, I decided to aggravate them with words in my mind. I can hear my own voice. I told them I'm going to make you pay for all of the years of torture that I've taken, and all you are going to hear is aggravation. For every single second of my privacy that you have taken away from me and my family. Then said this, the slaves began a program of perversion. First was with my dog. I am very playful with my pet, and suddenly one day that I was petting him I felt strange, in the sense of the word. I thought, this is strange, and then afterwards that strange sensation continued. Then in that moment I realized that was impost, so I thought, look at this losers, don't know how to put me down, and they are doing this. So I told them that I know what you are trying to do, and I started laughing, and then I said again out loud, you'll never take my will, ass. So just to show them that I meant what I said, I kept playing with my dog, and even though that attacks continue, I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use of people, better said young people, also children and homosexuals. When I aggravated them I usually called demeaning names, and one of them is referring to homosexuals. For me all of the slaves are misfits, society haters, scumbags, etc. No, I don't have anything personal against them, homosexuals, but as my way to aggravate the slaves, and since they love to use children for the torture and stalking, street theater etc. Especially teenagers for the stalking at close range with an attitude, they are using them during my sleep in the perversion program, and so you can imagine what the slaves of torture are pretending to do to me. In the last days, as today September 9th, 07, anything I do, either watching TV or reading of whatever I'm doing, they brush me sort of say, I feel like I'm aroused all day and I feel the palpitations in my genitals for what I'm thinking, and since the attack comes so quickly, I realized my programming has been set on auto, in their central computers. No handlers could do something like this that quick. What make me realized, the slaves are desperate to get me. Unfortunately for them they are facing a strong wall where no matter how much their computers EAP me, I know I'm not changing. As I said, I feel like they've been set up a beam where I feel constantly stimulated. I'm talking sexually, like a heat in my genitalia.
A speech-language pathologist working in private practice with young children. I had a 7-year-old client who has autism, and she was the most significantly affected of all of my clients. I eventually had to tell this client to go to another clinic. And they used her to threaten the most torture in me as well as their most extreme forms of torture. For several months, she would cry and scream horribly during our therapy sessions despite having a great day at school. This was highly unusual behavior for her, as she usually behaved very well during her therapy sessions and had been making incredible progress on all of her therapy goals. This was used to threaten extreme torture on me, making me scream and cry, etc. They would make the kids act out the kinds of torture that would later be done on me. For example, they would also sometimes make her bite her hand, threatening to make me bite my hands, as they often do. One day, she had a large, severe bite mark on her arm. She has also grabbed her crotch, saying, ow, and this was used to threaten me with severe sexual torture. One day I also observed her gasping for air a few times in the same way that I do when I am being more severely suffocated. The suffocation had been in a mild state for a while up until this point. Many of their torture methods are cyclical in severity. Right after I saw this child being suffocated, then I began to experience very extreme suffocation all day, every day, for about 2 months straight, and that's also when they made it worse when I eat. Then I also work with a 4-year-old little girl with Down syndrome, as well as her 5-year-old sister who also has Down syndrome. I observed both of these girls suddenly grabbing their genitals in pain and verbalizing, ow. I observed this at least on 1 or 2 occasions for each of them during their separate sessions. During one session, I observed one of my 3-year-old clients suddenly grab his crotch and lean forward in his chair. And then he made a frightening grimace of severe pain. I asked him what was wrong and if he needed to use the restroom, but he said no to having to use the restroom and was not able to verbalize anything more due to his language delay. He looked puzzled and bewildered. Even though I had stated that it was time to do more work right before this incident, I quickly just let him play another game, and he quickly returned to his joyful, happy self again. In other sessions, he has also grabbed his crotch and said, "Ow," while looking up at me.
And have had a decent education. I live in El Dorado Hills, California, with my wife of 14 years, Lorna, and our 5 children. Nicole is 15, Patricia 14, Christopher 13, Dylan 9, and on her body after a few days of torture. We were told by a couple doctors to take her home and love her and spend the rest of the time we have with her. They told us she would ultimately die from this syndrome. Thank God that Lerner's syndrome was not what affected our daughter. Doctors are still dumbfounded by her rash and symptoms. Sadly, we know that her symptoms were effects from the torture this poor innocent 3-week-old baby endured. Recently, I lost complete time. I exhibited the flashing lights. My 9-year-old son Dylan complained about the lights. You will often hear that vision is something that is greatly affected with this type of torture.
So you...
Ms. Catherine Nestor.
My name is Catherine Nestor, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today. There is new work for the Commission for Human Subject Protection on our shores. And please give us a dramatic response, Susan, and please give us a congressional hearing. Thank you.
Research. I too believe my experience is referred to as no-touch torture, utilizing defense technologies. Jonathan Marino, he basically predicted all this a number of years ago in his book Undue Risk. I'm asking you to help initiate a congressional investigation. We've all come a long way. This is what is needed. We want to have the accounts of this extreme human rights abuse that's going on in our country documented and heard, all of the accounts. We also need what was done during the Clinton administration, which is a major declassification of some of these documents that are hiding what's been going on. I speak for many when I say we've suffered long enough. My personal experience has been 10 years. I've been vilified. I've been ostracized. I've been tortured. I have burns on my body. I'm an American. I have rights. The answer to the question, the big question today, could it happen today? The answer is yes, it is happening today. It is happening for some of us every day. I am begging for you to help us. Thank you.
Going to be shot in the face, and it was an older guy. He was like really disgruntled and pissed off. Yeah, she's gonna get shot in the face. You know, sound like an angry ass old person. You know, then a couple of days later, a female said the same thing. Gonna get shot in the face. You know, stupid shit like that. But what I really noticed is with the Voice of Skull, it's a bunch of females. You know, and I'm like, bro, really? You're not a woman. What real woman would stalk another female or sit back and allow that to go on? You really think they think it's nothing wrong with them? basically. You know, they call me a retarded bitch and all of this here, but I was top of my class in everything that I did. You know, every class I took, I excelled
any part of the body. This technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal, or it can sort of turn off the
today. The mass shooting that occurred in Maine last week, killing 18 people, was the country's deadliest of the year. It may also have been one of the most avoidable.
Army reservist, and the documents show that these warnings concerned his deteriorating mental health, rising paranoia and anger, and they came from pretty much every part of his life. But as we now know, none of those warnings prevented this mass shooting.
Well, Nick, where should we start in the story of those warnings? You mentioned that they go back many months.
I mean, the first time when the local police are really made aware that this guy is a concern is about 5 months ago in May, when his ex-wife and teenage son go to a school resource officer. And the school resource officer calls down a sheriff's deputy to speak with the family. And in that interview, the teenage son and the ex-wife say that he has started to hear voices. He's started to be increasingly paranoid and angry. They also note he has collected about 10 to 15 guns that he kept at a relative's house and brought them back to his. So they're going to the police and saying that he has access to a large number of firearms. I mean, they were very worried about him, and I think what they also were... I think that's right.
Okay, so what happens next?
So the next thing we know that happens is in July. Card travels with his reserve unit to West Point, New York for an annual training exercise. And there's a very concerning incident that takes place. They're all hanging out together at a motel, and he starts accusing them of calling him a pedophile. This is one of his paranoid delusions that comes up repeatedly. He shoves one at one point, and everyone is just freaked. Travels with his reserve unit to West Point, New York for an annual training exercise. And there's a very concerning incident that takes place. They're all hanging out together at a motel, and he starts accusing them of calling him a pedophile. This is one of his paranoid delusions that comes up repeatedly. He at a motel, and he starts accusing them of calling him a pedophile. This is one of his paranoid delusions that comes up repeatedly. He shoves one at one point, and everyone is just freaked.
About his time spent here in New Mexico.
As sick as this may sound, I've even had stalkers follow me into church while I was in Las Cruces and in Houston. I've had stalkers follow me into church to harass me.
May had worked as a prosecutor in Las Cruces just weeks before the shooting. In his last words, May speaks of his paranoia and coins himself as a targeted individual who's been a victim of stalking and harassment. He talked about a trip to Houston where he said cars would drive by and honk their horns every 10 minutes to keep him on the edge and agitated.
Father, forgive me for what I'm about to do. Forgive me for all of my sins, past sins, present sins, any future sins.
Why? Was a mentally unstable individual. This shotgun is the primary murder weapon. On it, he etched a number of carvings, including "End to the Torment," "Better Off This Way," and my ELF weapon. Alexis had been hearing voices and believed he was being bombarded by microwaves, something naval authorities knew about.
There are multiple indicators that Alexis held a delusional belief that he was being controlled or influenced by extremely low frequency, or ELF, electromagnetic waves.
And in his computer files, the FBI found this.
A document retrieved from the electronic media stated, quote, "Ultra-low frequency attack is what I've been subject to for the last 3 months. And to be perfectly honest, that is what has driven me to this."
And so on what should have been a routine day, Alexis killed 12 people, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. Diane, they never had a chance, and still no answers.